The subcommittee will come to order. And before we begin, I'd like to ask unanimous consent that Representative Dan Lipinski be permitted to join the subcommittee for today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. Today's hearing will focus on how we can improve the nation's highway freight network. Current Federal Surface Transportation Authorization, MAP 21, expires September 30th of this year. As the subcommittee begins its work on drafting the successor to MAP 21, we must understand how we can improve the safety, efficiency, and reliability of the nation's highway freight network. Safe and efficient movement of freight throughout the United States directly impacts the day-to-day lives of every one of our nation's citizens. Basic necessities such as food and clothing rely on many modes of the freight transportation system to reach consumers. American businesses rely on an efficient, safe, reliable freight system to move their goods to domestic and to international markets. The nation's highway system is an essential part of the broader freight transportation system. Not every community is located adjacent to a railroad, airport, waterway, or port, but consumer goods are almost invariably transported along the nation's 4 million miles of highways and roads for at least part of the journey. Furthermore, first and last mile connections to other modes of transportation are almost always made on the highway system. In 2011, the U.S. transportation system moved nearly 18 billion tons of goods valued at almost $17 trillion. However, each day, traffic on approximately 12,000 miles of the highway system slow below posted speed limits, and an additional 7,000 miles experience stop-and-go conditions. In addition, America's reliance on the highway system is growing faster than the system is itself. The Federal Highway Administration estimates that in the next 30 years, there will be 60% more freight that must be moved across the United States. MAP 21 laid the foundation for a significant federal focus on federal mobility. Specifically, MAP 21 set national freight policy by delineating specific goals related to freight mobility. MAP 21 also required the Secretary of Transportation to designate a national freight network and establish a strategic plan to meet the goals stipulated in the national freight policy. Finally, MAP 21 encouraged the creation of state freight advisory committees and the development of state freight plans. MAP 21 is set to expire on September 30th. Ensuring the safe, efficient, and reliable movement of goods is a priority for this subcommittee in the reauthorization bill. Well, we have an impressive group of witnesses before us today, and I trust their testimony and experience will provide valuable insight into this important issue, and I thank each one of you for joining us and for the effort that you and your staff put into your prepared statements, the entirety of which will be made a part of the record. The panel consists of the Honorable Mark Gottlieb, Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, and even more importantly, former Mayor of Port Washington, a beautiful city, the port of Ozaukee County, north of Milwaukee. He's testifying on behalf of the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. Honorable Gerald Bennett, Mayor of Palos Hills, Illinois, testifying on behalf of the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. Henry Maier, President and Chief Executive Officer of FedEx Ground, and Susan Alt, Senior Vice President, Public Affairs for Volvo Group, North America. And before calling on the ranking member of the subcommittee, Ms. Norton, to make any remarks, I would I will be turning to Mr. Lipinski to introduce one of the witnesses, but Ms. Norton, would you like to proceed first, or would you like to?
If he's going to introduce witnesses, then maybe I should.
What?
If he's going to introduce witnesses, then maybe I should.
You should go ahead, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday we had a stimulating and informative roundtable with virtually all the stakeholders as we prepare for the reauthorization. Today, I think you have followed that roundtable with just the right hearing to facilitate on how we're going to facilitate what we, I suppose euphemistically or perhaps correctly, call commerce Mr. Chairman, the American people understand all too well what we mean when we say we got to transport people. They think about the roads and the highways. They think about their transit. They think about their cars. But I'm not sure that they understand what makes this country great, and it is the transportation of goods so that those people can use the goods. Our competitors certainly understand, because not only our Western competitors, but particularly in the rising developing countries, transportation networks are a focus for the new 21st century global economy. In this very area, Mr. Chairman, we see private industry investing in their own infrastructure. I've come to you about some concerns some of my constituents have about the CSX Railroad. And I've tried to focus them on their particular neighborhood concerns while making them understand that CSX is engaged in a national transportation matter. And so I've tried to focus them on what we can do to make sure this railroad, which is going to be right in their backyard as it is expanding, does not interfere with them. What we have in the state of Virginia as the Panama Canal, of course, is widened, is quite extraordinary. The state of Virginia and private industry is putting gazillions of dollars into deepening the port so that it connects to trucks and to the railroad. They know what they're doing. The question is, what are we going to do? Because there are some things that only the federal government can do, and that's what's made this government great. Abraham Lincoln understood in the middle of the Civil War that he nevertheless had to connect the country and its goods and services, and so the railroads were built right in the middle of the Civil War. The President, I want to note, Mr. Chairman, in his transportation remarks yesterday, and apparently in his budget, is calling for something that puts us, I think, all on the same page. The only real program we have that is truly intermodal is, of course, the Tiger grants, and he's calling for $600 million in Tiger grants. I don't think that's a whole lot more than what we've been putting in, and I certainly hope we can at least get that in. MAP 21 did not include did include, frankly, and justifiably included a number of provisions that took account of the important federal role in connecting parts of the country for freight and in understanding that we need a vision. I suppose that's where we should be going now, a true vision for freight transportation and making the resources available. I take note, Mr. Chairman, also, I was not on the freight panel, but I'm very impressed with the recommendations of the bipartisan freight panel and believe that they provide a vision. It seems pretty clear that we've got to have dedicated investments for large multimodal freight projects. I remember yesterday a member raised the notion that some members of the public, when they have to pay the user tax, either local or federal, don't understand where all the money went. And I piped up then, 94% of it goes right back to the states. And we essentially are pass-throughs, collection agents for the states. But that money goes for individual state projects and has nothing to do with connecting, or does not necessarily have to do with connecting the United States to one another when it comes to freight and goods. You cannot expect a local jurisdiction to accept the costs of doing that if the goods are merely going through its states. these are broadly based freight projects which provide broadly based benefits which impose substantial localized costs if the local jurisdiction alone is left to pick them up. And what it means is it just won't get picked up. Addressing the needs to invest in these projects of national and regional significance, I believe, should be a priority in MAP 21. We need first the vision, then we need the plan, and then, of course, we can't avoid our obligation to provide the means, which is to say the resources for the movement of goods. I thank the Freight Panel for laying the groundwork for us to develop the policies and to make sure that we use this MAP 21 to provide freight intermodal transportation systems appropriate for the 21st century. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I'd now like to call on Mr. Lipinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here to introduce one of our witnesses, Jerry Bennett. In serving as mayor of the city of Palos Hills for over 3 decades, Jerry has been an outspoken advocate for uniting cities and villages. He founded and continues to serve as president of the Southwest Conference of Mayors and served as past chair of the Metropolitan Mayors Caucus and is currently a member of the Mayors Caucus Executive Committee. He's also a past president of the Illinois Municipal League, and as representative from Southwest Cook County, Jerry Bennett holds the position of chair of the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning and its Executive Committee. And it's his experience at CMAP that make him an expert on transportation, especially the topic of freight movement in the nation's freight hub. So very happy today to have with us Jerry Bennett to talk to us about freight movement, especially about the CREATE program, public-private partnership that's been very successful and is moving along well in the Chicago area. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd ask unanimous consent our witnesses' full statements be included in the record without objection. So ordered, and we now look forward to your summarizing those statements in approximately 5 minutes and then subjecting yourself to questioning from the panel, beginning with the Honorable Mark Gottlieb, Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, on behalf of the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. A warm welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Petri, Ranking Member Norton, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. I'm Mark Gottlieb, the Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of AASHTO and the state DOTs on the importance of efficient and safe freight movement to our state's economies and to provide input on our freight transportation challenges and recommendations for the reauthorization of MAP 21. 2 issues I'd like to address. First, because the economies of most of our states are tied to freight-intensive industries, the states are investing their core formula federal aid, highway, and bridge funds, along with state funds, to eliminate freight bottlenecks and improve capacity and reliability. Second, the state DOTs support and want to collaborate with U.S. DOT on establishing a national multimodal freight policy, but the freight networks should be identified through a state-driven process. The states will continue to engage in performance-based planning at all levels, local, state, and regional, to drive investments that address freight needs. The freight-intensive sectors of our state economies, manufacturing, agriculture, construction, energy, and merchandising, for example, account for about 1/3 of the U.S. economy. Competitiveness in these sectors is directly related to our ability to improve the safety and efficiency of our freight transportation system. Freight moved in the United States is forecast to double between 2005 and 2035, from 16 billion to 31.4 billion tons, and 80% of that freight by tonnage and 94% by value is projected to move by truck on the interstate, the NHS, and the feeder routes serving the first and last miles of movement. We recommend that Congress allow time for the program consolidation and performance reforms in MAP 21 to be put into practice, which we believe will lead to greater priority being given to freight projects. We urge you not to establish a new separate freight program with funding coming at the expense of the existing core highway programs, which are already being invested in projects that benefit freight. We support the establishment of an overall national freight transportation policy. However, we believe that designation of highway and freight networks cannot be accomplished through a top-down federal process. A one-size-fits-all set of designation criteria fails to address unique state-specific freight considerations. The methodology used to designate the 27,000-mile National Highway Freight Network resulted in critical gaps and omissions and does not reflect many significant freight corridors operating within, between, and among the states. In Wisconsin, we've designated a multimodal freight network with significant stakeholder involvement, and we are engaged in various regional efforts to support multi-state freight planning and operations, including the 10-state Mid-America Freight Coalition, collaborating on research, planning, operations, and investment priorities for freight movement, and the Great Lakes Regional Transportation Operations Coalition, which includes 10 states, provinces, and toll authorities. All of us are working together to improve operations to give our Great Lakes region a competitive edge. We believe it is appropriate for the states to continue to be the focal point for addressing freight needs. We recommend that Congress replace the MAP 21 mileage caps for a primary highway freight network with a designation process undertaken by the state DOTs in consultation with MPOs, local governments, stakeholders, and USDOT, giving the USDOT the authority to add routes and/or corridors to ensure connectivity. Moreover, we recommend that you give states additional flexibility to support multimodal freight planning efforts with expanded funding eligibility. I'd like to conclude with a comment on the status of the Highway Trust Fund. USDOT estimates that the trust fund may run out of money as early as this summer. If this happens, FHWA will delay payments to states for projects already completed. We rely on prompt payment to pay our contractors, and any delay will have serious economic consequences. Moreover, unless Congress acts to either increase trust fund revenues or provide additional general fund support, the states will be unable to obligate any new federal funds starting in fiscal year 2015. In both cases, there will be immediate and direct impacts to our states' economies. A significant number of needed highway projects, including freight projects that underpin economic development and improve quality of life, will be delayed or canceled. We look forward to working with you to address our nation's freight challenges and to offer our suggestions and views as you tackle reauthorization of the Federal Aid Highway Program. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mayor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you, the committee, Congressman Lipinski, for this opportunity to testify.
Did you put your thing on? Yeah. Is the mic on?
How's that? Thank you, Chairman. Do I get those seconds back, I guess? For this opportunity to testify, I would like to thank you, the committee members, Congressman Lipinski, for your efforts in support of transportation and freight in particular. My agency, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, CMAP, elevated freight as a high priority within the region's award-winning GO-TO 2040 comprehensive plan. Our region is an unparalleled hub not only of domestic but also international freight. Over 1 billion tons of freight worth more than $3 trillion move through the Chicago region each year. A quarter of all U.S. freight and nearly half of all U.S. intermodal freight originates, terminates, or passes through metropolitan Chicago. Nearly half of the freight in the region is through traffic, an indication of our central role in the national freight system. To address freight congestion, the Chicago Region Environmental and Transportation Efficiency Program, called CREATE, the first in its nation, was established in 2003. This is a public-private partnership of the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Illinois Department of Transportation, the Chicago Department of Transportation, Amtrak, the region's metro transit system, and private railroads. CREATE is dedicated to implementing specific rail improvements in and around the Chicago area. Its 70 projects include new flyovers, grade separations, improving signaling, equipment modernization, and as of November 2013, 20 projects have been completed and 9 more are under construction. Most of the completed projects are rail improvements, many of which are on the belt corridor that circles Chicago to the west and south. The connections to multiple railroads, 8 of the 11 belt corridor projects have been completed and another is under construction. In contrast, relatively few projects move forward to mitigate freight's negative impacts on local communities. Only 3 of CREATE's 25 highway rail grade separation projects have been completed and only 3 are under construction. In fact, due to the lack of funding, 13 grade separations have not started at all, and not one of the program's 7 passenger corridor projects was completed in the past 10 years. This is also highly problematic because in a truly intermodal economy, grade separations facilitate the movement of truck traffic through the region. We need more Federal investments to help complete these projects. Create affects the global economic competitiveness, not just in our state, but the U.S. as a whole. The entire project is estimated to cost $3.8 billion, but there is a $2.5 billion funding gap. Through the efforts of Congressman Lipinski, CREATE received initial Federal funding of $1 million through Safety Lou, Projects of National and Regional Significance, PNRS program. About 1/3 of CREATE funding to date has come from Federal sources, including PNRS, Tiger, the ARA high-speed rail programs. These Federal investments have also been leveraged by more than $400 million through the State of Illinois capital programs, but without a dedicated source such as PNRS, CREATE, and other vitally important freight partnerships cannot make adequate progress. Due to freight's national importance, continued Federal assistance is critical. In some respects, the 2-year MAP 21 reauthorization does more to recognize the vital role of freight in the U.S. economy. However, CMAP's position is that MAP 21 missed its opportunity to address freight needs comprehensively with adequate funding that treats all modes strategically. Furthermore, MAP 21 should have formalized the role of metropolitan regions in the development of recommended state freight plans. CMAP is not alone in this position. With some of the largest metropolitan regions in the country, we have developed 3 principles for freight in the next transportation reauthorization bill. 1, integrate metropolitan regions into the freight investment decision-making process, dedicate a range of funding sources, and authorize a minimum of $2 billion funding per year for freight investment, consistent with proposals from the National Freight Advocacy organizations. Redefine the national freight network to comprise a multimodal transportation system. We support a robust Federal freight policy. It's time for the Federal Government to provide the leadership and resources to support a resilient national freight network.
Thank you. Mr. Maier.
Chairman Petri, Ranking Member Norton, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for giving FedEx the opportunity to testify today. We commend the subcommittee for recognizing the critical importance of our nation's transportation infrastructure. This is a topic of utmost importance to millions of FedEx customers and stakeholders, and one that absolutely, positively affects our country's ability to compete in the global marketplace. I'm President and CEO of FedEx Ground, one of the 4 primary operating companies, along with FedEx Express, FedEx Freight, and FedEx Services.